Hi, welcome back to Discus Talk, where me and Carrie are going to sit here and do some question and answering for you guys. I put out some feelers a couple of weeks ago about something to do for a live stream, and it covered a very varied number of topics. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it down to some specific fish questions because some of these were filtration and that sort of thing, and we're not going to go into all that. That would take way too much time. And there's tons of videos out on filtrations, the different ones you can use, and that sort of thing. So we're just going to stick to some of the more common questions. The one I want to start with is one that Carrie and I had a discussion about a week ago, and that was the 30-day syndrome. Carrie and I both have told people that we think that you need to keep your aquarium cleaner because it's possible that the aquarium being not as clean as it should be could be a cause of bacteria growth in the tank, which could attack the baby discus. And yeah, it could be parasites that in some cases, but if you have cleaned up your parents, I think that, Carrie and I both agree on this, that your bacteria in your tank could be affecting your fry. So what are your thoughts, Carrie?
I totally agree on this. I think the big part of it is beef heart. If people are pounding beef heart and you're trying to raise, 50 to 80 fry and you're keeping them in a 29 gallon, that's the start of the cause is keeping the fry with the parents too long in this small tank and just trying to feed as much food as they need to grow. It's just, and a lot of these tanks only have one filter. That's another thing. So you're pulling this filter out and cleaning it out, and you're damaging your beneficial bacteria. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think all fry tanks, breeding tanks, you should add another filter or hang on the back or another sponge, or at least have something going, or just be ready to move them to a new tank. I find that to be the best success is, once they get, it's hard to judge when they're too big and when they're getting too big, and just depending on the number, but moving them, getting them out of that breeding tank into a nice, fresh, clean tank, trash in that tank. As soon as you start trashing it, get ready to move them again, or split them up and break them up, or get them into a big tank, whatever works the best for
Mm-hmm.
you. But definitely, I agree that's a big cause.
All right. I mean, we've told people before when you're doing your water changes, you need to be wiping the glass down, you need to be wiping the bottom down, and all of that. And we did, and I know you don't remember it. We did have a batch that a couple of the fry turned dark, and we immediately moved them into a sterile tank, and we did not lose any more. We lost two from that batch, and we didn't lose any more
That's
after we
awesome.
moved them. So I mean, it to me that screams bacteria. Because if
Yeah.
it's parasites, you're not just you're when you move the fish, you're moving the parasites with them. If it was parasites, that would have still been going on.
Uh-oh.
Carrie's gonna bounce in and out on me.
Oh no, no, dude! It's like now there's simply a group message going on with.
Yeah, I pulled
Like,
that up for a second. I'm like, why are they talking now?
so many things going on, but yeah, it's so. Definitely, flukes are a problem. They cause secondary issues, which could lead to that. So you
Right.
got you got flukes now. You got double problems that could just one little thing you do wrong now, and yeah, this could just happen to you real quick. Uh,
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. That's why I advocate for clean parents. Do your quarantine protocols, do your Prizy, your Metro, your Levamazole. Before you ever breed them, go ahead and get that done. Get rid of any parasites that you have to worry about. Once you do that, the only thing you have to worry about is keeping that tank clean.
right. I mean, I
That, I
right now,
mean,
right now, I probably.
Carrie's bouncing again. Oh my goodness.
Can you guys hear me or no?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You froze for a second, so
Did I?
yeah,
So,
it's
anyways, what
okay.
I was saying is I have like 80 fry. They're probably like a half inch in size. I have them in a 90 gallon. I have 3 sponge filters rocking in there. I also have a hang on the back AquaClear with a sponge over the intake. And, I will do right now, not with straight tap water, but with aged water, I will do like a 90% water change.
Yeah.
And it won't be every day, but like I will go in there before I start the water change, and I will actually squeeze the filters in the tank with the fry because I know I'm
Right.
taking out almost all the water. So that helps get everything out of there. And I'll let it settle a little bit for, 5-10 minutes and then suck off the bottom. And that usually works really good.
Right.
You know, and that's the lazy way. I mean, if you want to be professional about it, definitely take it off, put it in a bucket of tank water and clean it out and rotate them and clean them. But yeah, definitely keeping it clean and fresh, clean water, and keep an eye on your nitrates and nitrites and your ammonia, especially with the babies. Temperature is also important. Keep an eye on all that stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I believe that's the big problem is the small tanks, the amounts of food being fed. There's just so many stress factors when a lot of these people get lucky and they get a batch of discus fry going and they're like, oh yeah, this is awesome. But it's hard, man, to really judge the amount of food they're gonna. You really have to feed them, and it's hard to get it exactly leveled out at where you're at. But once you figure it out, then it gets pretty simple. But it takes some
Right.
time. It takes time.
Yeah. Going from that, what is your recommended treatment for it? You know what mine is. It's going to be kanamycin for that. But what is your recommended treatment for bacterial infections in fry?
I used to be a real big fan of formaldehyde, and I still am, but I've been messing around with chloramine T a lot now. And,
Hmm.
just like I was scolded by some of the Asian guys, we had a big discussion. And they're right. The formaldehyde does cloud up the water. It is a little harder on the beneficial bacteria. Chloramine T seems to it's not so hard on the bacteria, and it bounces back pretty fast, and the water never goes cloudy. And it's a quick change too, especially with fry.
Right.
I've put like a good batch of 200 in a 125 where I thought, hey man, this is plenty of room, plenty of filtration, and it still wasn't enough. It was
Right.
just too many fry, too much food, too many feedings, not enough water changes. You think you're there, but you're not. But yeah, so I'll use the chloramine T on them, and it's like a change overnight. And you're supposed to do a 48-hour, you know, 48-hour bath with that. But when you got 200 fry in a tank, it's kind of hard to do those long baths.
Right.
So you need
Yeah.
to, yeah, you gotta kind of, when you're raising baby discus, you really have to think ahead, plan things out, what you're gonna do if this happens, where you're gonna go if that happens, and how you're gonna handle everything. And if you do that and line everything up, it'll work out good for you. But
Yeah. And see,
that's
we
what I've
keep
been
it.
like.
We don't just have sponge filters in our fry tanks. We have hang on the backs, and it's not just the fry tanks. Some of the adult tanks have hang on the backs, or some of them we have canisters attached to, as well as the sponge filters.
Right.
So we do keep a lot of filtration on the babies. Now, let me look at some of these other questions that were asked. At what age are you pulling the fry? And what do you think, Carrie?
See, you get that all the time from everybody, but it's gonna. To me, it depends on the amount of fry. You get a batch of 50, I'll try to leave them in there as long as possible. You get a batch of 200, it's not gonna work like it worked on the batch of 50. You're gonna end up pulling these guys real fast because first off, you're gonna have to help feed them with baby brine, and you're trashing this tank now. Depending, most people breed in a 29 or a 20 high. If you're in a 20
Mm-hmm.
high, you're in trouble if you get 200 fry and try to raise them there. But I mean, yeah, it really depends on the amount of the spawn and how well they're doing and how well they take the brine. And
Right.
from there, that's pretty much the judgment call for me.
Right. For me, it's if you have a spawn of 200, it might be best to split the batch. And
Yes,
with that
yes,
many fry, I would split it at least into four and
yes.
put 50 in each tank. And that's something people have to think about when they want to breed discus is, do I have enough room to breed discus? Because if you have a batch of 200 and you need to split that up into four tanks, and then you say you have five breeders sitting, do you have enough tanks for that many fry?
Right,
A
right.
lot of people don't think about that. So, and there's a lot of culling that goes into it.
Yeah. So
Um,
that's my big mistakes too. Is I'm always preaching big tanks, big tanks, big tanks. But lately, I've been getting like giant spawns, and moving 200, 300 fry into a 125 is not a good idea. Yeah, you would think it would be, but it's really not. And like you said, you have to think back. Even I'll give credit where credit is due. There's been a few people that mentioned it before, yourself. Uh, Dion has mentioned it to me, and even my grandma told me that when I was little. Never put all your eggs in one basket. So
yeah,
yeah, I mean, so lately I've been trying to do that. Is just split everything up, and it takes from the workload. It makes things a little easier. That water, big giant water change is not so stressful anymore. So yeah, it's good to split them up. I agree with you on that for sure.
yeah. I think I've seen two different people that had large batches. They put them from the parents into a 125, and it was like half the fish weren't getting the food, the other half were out competing them.
Right,
And, so I think keeping it in a small batch, it makes less competition. You know how much you need to feed. You can see if they're getting enough food.
right,
A lot easier than if you're trying to look at 200 fish and make sure everybody in that tank has gotten food.
right.
Um,
It's
I
definitely a
just think it's easier.
yeah. It's definitely a balance. So I've been also successful at moving fry in the big tanks, but again, I can't recall the numbers and where I was at. It probably was like batches of 80 or batches of 100 that did better than batches of 200. But
Right.
yeah, I've had good success with it as well. But here's a good example. So recently, I just split up a batch of fish left. There was probably like 300 of them, so I put like 150 in a 125, and I put 150 in another 125,
Right.
and actually one of the tanks crashed, and all the fry crashed, and I had to treat them with chloramine T to bring them back. But the other tank, not a problem. Everything just
Right.
okie dokie. So yeah, and it was good that I had them split, because if I would have lost all those, it would have took a lot out of me. I'd have been a little upset, and I would have had that backup batch in the other tank. So
Right.
I'm a firm believer in it now. Definitely.
Something I noticed though, we had a batch that was about 150 fry from one of the melon couples, and we kept them together longer than some of our smaller batches of 50 or 60, which people need to understand that I'm dealing with very hard, very high pH water, so it's harder for us to get the bigger batches. But we had more luck with the smaller batches having less calls than the bigger batches. And I think that has to do with the out competing for food and that sort of thing. We ended up with a lot more calls from the bigger batch than we did from the smaller one.
Yes.
And I think that's something too to consider, when you want to breed the fry, is to have them split up into smaller groups so they aren't out competing.
Hans is a big believer in that too. He's always said that raising smaller batches was a lot less calls, less problems, a lot
Hmm.
easier than trying to raise those big batches up, for sure.
We have, I think, maybe 8 breeding pairs right now, and some of them, most of them are new pairings. So it's going to be a minute before they start producing, but some of them are producing on tap water, 30 to 40 fry. And the ones that we have in RO are the new breeders, so we don't have any batches with them yet. But I'm excited to see that we'll probably end up with 100, 150
Yeah.
from them. So once we get the RO back going, cold water seems to do something to the RO filters.
Yeah, like me right now, I have so I have I still need to set up 2 more tanks in my fish room. 2 125s are going to go up, and then I'm done. But as of right now, I have 2 batches of fry going. I have the scorpions and I have the blue diamonds. There's like
Right,
200 diamonds and there's like 300 scorpions. And yeah, I'm out of room. Just 2 batches.
right.
Every tank is loaded.
Uh, I want to mention something. We were talking about the treatment for the 30-day syndrome or the 4-week syndrome or the dying fry syndrome, whatever you want to call the syndrome. Neither of us said to use PP treatment. Neither of us. And one reason that is because it is too easy to overdose. That's the reason that we don't use it at our house. If you get it just a little bit over, you're going to damage the fry. I had an instance. I was cruising through the forums the other day, and somebody had a fish die suddenly. And he showed the gills, and why he showed the gills in that picture, I don't know. But the gills were just a lump of tissue, and the question was asked, "What have you treated with?" And this person had been treating this fish every 2 weeks with PP. There were no gills left on this fish. It was just a lump of melted tissue. That's all it was. This fish suffocated to death.
So when
I
I
mean,
imported, I used to use PP,
hmm
and what you're saying, I always had 2 or 3 fish around like that,
right,
always.
yeah.
So
It is a good medicine if you know how to use it. It is a dangerous medicine if you haven't had experience with it. I mean, it's that simple. People are recommending it to people who have never used it before, and guess what's happening? These fish are starting to die off from suffocation because people don't know how to use it. Others are recommending using it to people that don't know how. So that's a big issue in the hobby right now.
yes, it is.
At what age do you start calling Carrie?
Uh, I used to call when they were very, very small, but I cannot see anymore, and it's been very hard. But I mean, for the obvious calls, dorsal fins, short gill plates, things you can notice and really see, those go as soon as possible. Small size runts, belly sliders, things like that you're going to notice real quick. I try to get rid of them as soon as possible because
Right.
they're never gonna mount out to anything, and they're only destroying your water quality, eating up your food, and making your life a lot more hard, more complicated as far as keeping the tank clean and trying to raise them fry. But yeah, so I believe in calling as soon as possible, getting those fish out of the way, and saving that room for the fish that are gonna actually turn out to grow and really
Right.
be something. So yeah.
And see, that was my thing. I don't think there's a real age to start
Right.
calling. It's when you see it.
Yeah.
It's as soon as you see it. We are guilty of keeping culls. We have from the Winston Lau lines that I got from Bob. We have a tank with the smallies, the small ones in it,
Right.
and they have now they're 8 months, 8 or 9 months now. And those fish, and we were right to pull them out. Those fish run anywhere from 2.5 inches right now to 4 inches, and they're perfectly round, little bitty eyeball. They're runts. They just never grew. They're not stunted. If they were stunted, I would have seen the big eye, but they're absolutely gorgeous little fish, but they are little,
Yes.
little. So yeah, they do, and you do have to call those. We didn't simply because of the lines we're working with. We wanted to see
Already
what happens.
send them
What
to
they,
Florida.
huh?
Send them to Florida.
Yeah, they'd get sold real quick down there as 2.5 inch fish, 3.5 inch fish when they're grown.
Bad, Terry. Bad, bad, bad. Shut your mouth. Okay.
You didn't say who would do it. You just
I
said that it
know.
would be done.
I know.
Um, let's see. The next one. Genetics takes too long. I don't know why I put that one in there.
Genetics.
That one's about cross contamination. Let's talk about that for just a second, Carrie. And I'm going to ask you this, and I'm going to give you what I have come up with on it. Why do you think that discus are more susceptible to cross contamination with bacteria than other fish?
Just because their genetic makeup and the evolution of the discus being in low pH acid water, that right there alone is a big reason. So now we're keeping them in that higher pH level. The bacteria is more plentiful, more abundant. That's how these issues, that's how it happens.
Right. Okay. I was reading a research study the other day, and it didn't have to do with that. It had to do with with breeding and rearing of the fry.
Hmm.
And they took samples of the slime coat before laying the eggs, during the eggs time, during the wiggler stage, and then again during the free swimming stage. And they found that during that time, at the first, there was very little protein, very little of the probiotics in the slime coat.
Right.
But as it went further into gestation, the slime coat gained all of the proteins, all of the antibodies, and all of that toward the wiggler stage. And if you think about that, when you're thinking about how that works, they're
Hmm.
always producing slime coat. All fish produce slime coat, but discus have to have a gland or multiple glands, many glands in the skin that also produces the antibodies and the proteins that are put into it. And that creates another pathway for bacteria to attack. And that could be why they end up with so many bacterial slime diseases, is because it's got that extra opening for it.
Very
And
possible.
that's something that I was thinking about while I was reading that paper. I'm thinking, well, that would explain why discus are so much different. There's only 3 species of fish in the world that actually produce food for their young in that way.
Right. Right.
So, that could very well be the reason. I mean, it doesn't make any difference as far as treating them or anything like that, but it would very well explain why they get it.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I just thought that was really interesting when I was reading
Oh,
it, reading the papers about it.
Tammy's gone.
I'm
Where is she?
gone.
We can see.
You're still there, Carrie. Can you hear me?
Hey, wake up! All
Carrie's
right,
phone was just acting silly.
you're
I
back.
can I could see you the whole time. Oh, but that was an interesting thing that I thought about when I was reading that
I
paper.
mean, it's not out of the ordinary for sure. And I do know what you're speaking of. I did read that, and it was very, very interesting. But yeah, I mean, hard to prove again, but
Yeah,
it does. It does open the mind for sure.
yeah. I mean, it was for me. It was what is different about discus fish that they can
Right.
get these cross contaminations where an angelfish doesn't get it. Well, an angelfish doesn't feed the fry,
Right.
and that could very well be it. I mean, you bring just about any fish into a fish room, throw it in a tank, and it's fine.
Right.
You do that with a discus, and you're risking losing all of your discus. But all your other fish will be fine. Your discus will die, but that's the biggest risk with them. And it's been a nagging question with me for a long time is why are discus susceptible to it and other fish are not? And that is something that could be considered and
Yes,
should be considered probably. And
I agree.
anybody that I talk about a research paper, you're welcome to email or message me, and I'll see if I can get it for you. Just shoot me an email or something if you hear me talking about one. Oh, let's see. Okay, we've done starting out in discus. Start bare bottom with if you're going to have small fish, keep your tanks clean, learn how to take care of them, and then move to bigger fish.
Right.
And you could have planted tanks with bigger fish. So don't let anybody ever tell you that I'm against planted tanks. I absolutely love planted tanks. I just don't think you should put small fry in planted tanks because of the amount fed them and keeping it clean.
I don't think you should put any plants until you learn the discus first. Once you learn the discus,
That too.
then go for it.
What advice would you go back and give yourself when first starting out with discus?
Ooh, that's a good one. Uh, um, be patient. Don't rush into orders and buying and collecting fish. These fish will always be around. Like when I first bought blue diamonds, I had to have them. I had to buy them from this guy. I had to be quick about it. I didn't want him to sell them to nobody else. I needed them all. And yeah, these fish are always around. The quality, if you look and hunt, you can find what you're looking for, what pleases you as far as quality wise, and what your goals are as far as just show tank, or you want to be breeding, or whatever your goals are. But yeah, I would say be a little more patient, take your time, do a little more homework. Don't jump in head first.
Exactly. That is very good. And I think if I were to go back, I think mine would be don't listen to people that can't show where they get their information from.
Very good.
I think that is really, really important. If you can't show me where you found this information, then how am I supposed to believe you? I mean, you go back and you hear something word of mouth. Oh, here's an example, metronidazole. Everybody runs around saying metronidazole to deworm your fish. Well, metronidazole is not a dewormer.
Right.
So make sure that when somebody's telling you something, that they can tell you where they got it from, got the information from. That is a biggie, biggie,
And,
biggie.
and what kind of worm is this Metro treating?
Yeah, that's too. I mean,
We
people
do it.
deworm, and everybody says praziquantel. It is a dewormer, but praziquantel only does certain worms. It doesn't do all the worms.
Right.
There is one that does. I don't particularly recommend it. I'd rather keep the treatments for roundworms and tapeworms separate.
Sure.
Mainly because there's been some iffy information on whether or not this other medication causes harm to fish. Nothing's been confirmed yet, so I can't really say anything because that would be kind of like slanderous information. So I'm not going to do that. But we use praziquantel for tapeworms and flukes, and we use levamisole for roundworms. That covers the spectrum. We use metronidazole for amoebas and flagellates and ciliates and most of the protozoa. So you can pretty much cover most of the protozoa with that. There is another medication that I am hoping to start getting, and that is dimetrodazole. And that one is another type of metronidazole. It also treats all the flagellates. It does not treat worms, just like metronidazole.
Is that
But
the pigeon medication?
it is. It is. There is a company that makes it for fish. I do not know if it is technically allowed in the U.S. I am still checking into that right now. I'm hoping to start getting some. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But just check your information on stuff. That's one good one. Oh. As far as medication dosages, I would not start Googling medication dosages.
Oh,
Uh,
never. Or read or the directions on most bottles.
that's true too. You need to, if it's not on the bottle of medication, you probably need to contact somebody who has the dosages. The dosages can be found in books. Um, this is the one that I'm using right now. It has all the dosages in it for the different medicines. As a matter of fact, it's open to that right now. I've got
Nice.
page markers in. There's another one that I got off of, I can't remember the name of it, but I think it's Vet Books. And that is Dr. Edward Nova's book. And it is called Fish Disease Diagnosis and Treatment, second edition. It's vetbooks.ir is where I got that from. And this is, I don't know if we can see that or not, but this is kind of what it looks like.
Right. Okay.
That is another one that I use because some medications are listed in some books and some are not listed in some books. So most of the main ones that we use are listed in all of the books. Your praziquantel, your levamisole, the ones we use for quarantine, which, I mean, everybody knows my quarantine procedure. I've added kanamycin sulfate to my quarantine procedure at the end of the levamisole. Yes, my quarantine procedure is long. But I have seen what cross-contamination does, and I don't want it.
Longer the better.
Absolutely. Let's see. I don't know, Carrie, what are some other questions? I didn't get all the questions written down, I don't think. and I've missed quite a few. But how do you go about culling your fry? That's a good one.
Yeah, so I've been doing this too long, and my patients have grown thin, and I'm not too humane anymore. Most of them, I used to feed them to my ducks. I would feed them to other fish. Um, a lot of them will just get flushed. I used to freeze them and spend a lot of time. Now I just, again, my patients have worn thin, and it's just get it done, get it over with, and be gone. Out of sight, out of
Yeah.
mind. That's kind of how I am now.
Now, we were using ice water, but my husband decided he wanted predator fish. So
Right.
any culls are actually grown to a decent size and put into the predator tank. And if they survive, they survive. Chances are very slim. So we actually had an angelfish that survived the the Bashirs for a little while, but that still didn't last. I think he lasted about 4 days. We thought that with him for a while. That's terrible. But we do. If you want the most humane way, my opinion, it's ice water because they go into shock. They don't even know what's going on after that. I mean, they
Right.
instantly go into shock when they hit that ice water.
Right.
You can also throw them to the floor, but in my opinion, that's just too cruel, even though it is quick. I just can't.
Yeah, no, that I can't do. So yeah. Uh-oh.
I was still here.
Hmm. You're back.
I hit the wrong button. But I was trying to think of a couple of other questions. I know there was one and I couldn't find it, and I was looking for it. So, um, and it was a good one. As we've gone over the other
Remember.
stuff. Yeah, that was one. When you're getting ready to purchase discus, and that was one of the ones for the what would you go back and tell yourself when you're getting ready to purchase discus. Don't take one person's word for something.
Right.
Because you can go to a shop. It could be a well-known shop, it could be a well-known breeder, and you can pick out the most beautiful, beautiful discus, and you can bring them home with you. But somebody else living 4,000 miles away can order discus from this same place, and what they get in those bags be so horrendous and be sick that, yeah, you have a good view of that person, but somebody else doesn't. So always ask multiple people, multiple groups. Don't keep it in one group because that group may be run by that particular shop.
Right.
And we do have groups that are run by that particular shop. If you're going there to pick something out, that's fine. You know what you're going to get. But if you're getting ready to order and you're going to have it shipped to you, you need to order from somebody that many, many groups and many, many places say this person is reputable. You will get a nice fish in the shipment.
Right.
Because a lot of times you might not. You might get something that is just not what it should be, and you're paying the money for it. It should be all that.
Another thing I want to bring up real quick. Sorry to cut you off. I'll make it fast. But
It's fine.
the other thing I hear is, oh, I'm going to buy 2 fish from this so and so this month, and then I'm going to get 2 more fish next month, and I don't have to quarantine them because they're coming from the same place.
No.
Oh, that is a no-no as well.
Yeah. There's actually one on the forum right now that did that exact thing. He bought some fish from that shop. He brought them home. They're doing great. He's happy with them. He wants to get some more, so he goes back to the same shop. He brought them in, put them straight in the tank. He's got sick fish right now. And some of the reason for that is, and I can give you several reasons, but the biggest one that I found, especially if you're going to that shop, most of those shops are on a central system with other fish.
Right.
those other fish are bringing in bacteria that your fish at home may not have been exposed to when they were there. This may be a different bacteria, a different pathogen, a different worm, a different fluke, a different whatever. And they're exposed to it in that system. You're bringing that one in, and then your fish are getting sick. And there's definitely one on the Simply Discus forums. If you guys haven't checked out the Simply Discus forum, there are years and years of experience over there.
Oh my God! So much.
I would definitely go and check that out.
Yeah, you could be an expert overnight. Be on TV like me.
Carrie, you were there almost from the beginning, I think.
No, I was. We all started it up at the same time.
Yeah, a lot of the most experienced people in discus are there. I know Andrew So is over there, and I can't even think of all the names. A lot of the Asian breeders are actually on there. I don't know if they talk as much over there or not, but you can go back and look at conversations from some of the pioneers of discus. Jack Watley himself was over there. So you can go back and you can read the things that they found, the things that they shared, all the information that was shared. Some of it has changed as new things were learned, but it's still nostalgic to go over and look at what they did in the beginning. The things that they had to try when they first brought discus in. So I think some of those conversations are over there as well on things that were when they first started bringing them in, things that they had to do. Right. So it's definitely an interesting place to go.
It's easy now because all the hard work has been done.
Yeah, it's way easier now. They talk about discus being a difficult fish. We don't find it so anymore. Matter of fact, we had a guy come down from Tennessee this week, and he wanted to see our fish run. He's not ready to buy anything. And he was telling me a lot of the stuff, how it was so difficult to keep the discus in, and he had so much trouble with breeding that he was trying to hand rear the fish. And, he said he just had a hard time with it. And this was 30 years ago. So, I mean, you learn things like that from meeting the people that were there at that time.
Right.
So, but yeah, he's looking to start up again, and I think it's great. So, I think he didn't write down enough stuff on his paper. He said he had information overload. Oh, I was looking to see if I had any more. I mean, I didn't do a very good job of organizing the questions, but some of them are things that we went over in the other videos. I don't see a reason to rehash some of them. Let's see, we talked about the size of the grow-out tank. We use a 55. Some people use 20s. It just depends on how many you're wanting to put in there and how often you're wanting to do your water changes. Let's talk about feeding, Carrie.
Okay.
What do you feed your fry? We start them out on brine shrimp. I know you start them, and I do as well on brine shrimp. So what is the next food you introduce after brine shrimp?
Yeah, it's usually live blackworms, to be honest. But there's definitely a shortage on live blackworms, and they're very expensive. And they're a lot of work. They're like having another fish tank and something to take care of and something you got to feed and something you got to clean. So now you're like taking care of your baby discus, and now you're taking care of worms just to feed them to these baby discus that you got to take care of too. So it gets complicated. The only thing I like about it is the water quality stays great. You can throw up a handful and feed the fry all day while you're gone. You can go on a day vacation, have the kids throw some worms in. So it's very handy in that aspect. But as far as the price goes now, it's just insane. So then my next go-to would be freeze-dried tubifex worms or blackworms, which are also just as costly. So yeah, I'm gonna have to start thinking of something here. Maybe I got all my ingredients for beef heart. I just gotta whip it together here. I haven't done so yet, but I've collected some salmon. I've collected some beef hearts. I've collected a meat grinder, and I'm looking for a few other things. I'm gonna go to me and the wife are gonna go to the Chinese shop here. They have like a market in my neighborhood, and they sell mussels and little tiny fiddler crabs and emerald crabs and all kind of different weird stuff. So I'm gonna go try to put something together. I got a lot of great info from Tammy and Brian and a lot of other people, and I'm gonna try to make my own little thing here and see what happens. But definitely need to do something. Fry will take to most foods, especially when you have a big group of 50 or 80. The feeding frenzy is phenomenal. That's your best time to get them on the foods you want them to eat. From there, I try to get them on flake food too. I'm working on that right now just to save some money. But again, it's very bad on the water quality, especially if they're not eating it well. So start slow and work them into it. But
we add a little bit of flake with the brine shrimp. I guess when they're about a week old, we'll start adding just a little bit of crushed flake in there, just so that they're eating the brine shrimp. They're going to eat that with it. That gets them used to the flavor, gets them used to that having that in there.
Yes.
But usually we'll add a little bit in, and of course we're feeding the adults beef heart. So at some point the fry started eating the beef heart with the parents. So and that helps.
That definitely helps.
And I think I asked you about when you're pulling the fry. We pull the fry when they're eating almost exclusively from the foods. So that's about the time that we pull them. That frees up the parents from having to feed them since they're already eating foods anyway.
Yes.
And it gives them a chance to reproduce again if they want to.
Right.
Most of the time they take a break. They'll eat the first 2 batches.
Yeah. So I'm on a rich diet right now. It's very costly. These freeze-dried blackworms. Actually, the Tubifex are a little cheaper.
I've been getting Tubifex, so I'm doing that too. And we feed everything Tubifex: the adults, the babies, everything. The adults, juveniles. And I have been informed that when an adult discus wants its Tubifex and you're not fast enough, that it actually hurts. So
surprisingly.
But the baby's not so much. But he has to do the big tank. I can't. There's no way I can do that. I'm just not tall enough. My arms aren't long enough. But he does that, and
they attack
him.
You gotta get
please. I've got a step ladder.
My multi-color stool collections. I got a red milk crate, an orange one, and a blue one.
But he said that does hurt when they go after him. The babies not so much, but the adults they're mean. Everybody says discus are so peaceful. No, they're not. No. They're just such a peaceful fish. They don't try to kill each other and put one in the corner and almost dead, Seen it. Let's see. I don't really see any more questions on the list, Carrie.
Yeah. We have more. I mean, we could do this again. We get a bunch going and get it together again and start doing it a little more.
Yeah,
I should have more time on my hands coming up here as soon as I get out of the hole at work. But
right. Yeah. And I'll probably put out again to get more questions for a live stream, and maybe we could do some Mythbuster videos or something. But everybody, watching, if you have any questions, if you'll shoot them to me, email discustalk@yahoo.com, on Facebook, on my Discus Talk page, or in the comments. And that's something we can write those questions down.
You're welcome.
And
sorry, guys.
That's okay. Write those down, and we will look at getting to those for you. And we'll do a live stream and do another question and answer video for you guys.
Okay. Very good.
All right, Carrie. I really appreciate you coming on to do this with me this morning. And we will catch you guys later.
Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, Tammy. Thank you.